Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar, Rover Product Enhancements v5.15, Custom Exports, Enhanced Contracts, and More, presented by Stayntouch Implementations Consultant James Lee. I'm your host, Erin Fisher, the content writer here at Stayntouch. Today's presentation will cover how you can get the most out of Rover v5.15 product release. In this webinar, we will identify new updates to contracts, explore changes to group code requirements, identify the addition of arrival and departure time to the confirmation email, and discover the addition of custom exports. We will have a short Q&A at the end of the presentation. Feel free to submit questions throughout the presentation, and we will answer them in the order they are received at the end. And that's all I have right now. James, I'm going to hand the presentation over to you.
Thanks, Erin. Well, hello, everyone. My name is James Lee, and today we will be discussing some new features that we rolled out in version 5.15. The first thing that we're going to be reviewing today is some new enhancements that we've made to the ability to set up our contract negotiated rates. Previously, to create a contracted rate, you had to do so on the the company card, but we have made changes now to where you could just create a rate code and attach the rate code to a contract directly on the company card. So if I go into my settings right here, and I set something up to show you as an example, but I have created a rate code for Amazon. And I show my Amazon is set up as a negotiated rate. And now if I go back and look at my company cards and bring up the company card for Amazon, under the contract tabs, you'll notice the screen looks a little bit different than what it used to look like before, but I do have two options here to link an existing contract or create a new contract. To create a new contract, I'm just going to click on the green button here. I do have to give it a contract name, so I can call this Amazon Corporate Rates 2019. You also need to give it an access code. Currently, the access code doesn't really have any functionality, but we are going to be rolling out some future functionality that's going to be tied around these access codes. So that's why it's considered a mandatory field for right now. Look for new features to come out that in the very near future. You need to select a date range. So if I wanted to go ahead and load my rates, now my system is still in 2017, but let's say I wanted to load my rates for 2018. For the contract, I can say, great, we'll start on January 1st, and we will end this contract on December 31st of 2018. Contracted number of nights, you can put in some information here just to show how many nights per month this company has guaranteed. It really doesn't do anything. It just allows you to kind of track that and see how they are coming up, meeting their contracted numbers. At this point, I can go ahead and save the contract. The contract has now been saved over here, and now I have the ability to link an existing rate code. So from here, I can say, I want to look for my Amazon rate, and this will attach the rate code to this contract, and now I can save changes. And now, when I go to make a reservation for Amazon, and I start in 2018, my Amazon contract will display with the Amazon rate code attached to it. Now you also have the ability to link rate code to multiple contracts. So if you wanted to, you could create tier rate codes. So if you know you have 5 or 6 different companies that have the same corporate negotiated rate, you could call them corporate negotiated rates A or tier B, etc. Create the individual contracts on the company profiles and link them all to the same rate code. That way you don't have to create a rate code for every single contract negotiated rate that you have, and you could just kind of create tiers and link them directly to those contracts on the company profiles. Okay. The next feature we're going to talk about is our group code requirements. We made a small change with our groups. And if I go into build a new group, Essentially what we did is we made the group code mandatory. So you do have to put something here. If you don't put anything in there, our system will populate a group code for you. So for example, I can call this, the name is the webinar for Rover 5.15. And if I leave this information blank and I fill out all my other information that is considered mandatory, definite, and I save the group, I have some demographics set up as mandatory here. Our system will auto-populate a group code for you. It does kind of take some number letters from the actual group name. It's the first 5 letters of the group, and then we'll add some numbers, a series of numbers at the end. Once the system has generated the group code, it cannot be changed. So if it's important for you to have your own scheme of how you want to have your block codes, it's important for you to go ahead and put in that information as you build out the group. All right, the next thing to cover is we made a small addition to our existing confirmation letters, and I'm going to actually bring over as an example. This is a confirmation from one of our hotels. What we've added is arrival time and departure time. Now, as a reminder, if you don't update the arrival and departure time of a reservation, it will default to your hotel check-in, checkout time, and so that will be the time displayed on the confirmation letters. And the last feature that we rolled out is something really exciting. We have rolled out the ability to create custom exports in Rover PMS. You can actually access this in reports, and you have schedule a report export. Under this option, you now have a tab here for custom exports. And if I go to custom exports here, and I can click on new export if I want to create one. And these are the different data sets that we can pull data from. So you can pull from allotments, company profile data, financial transactions, group data, guest data, reservation data, stay data, and travel agencies. And let's say for this example, I want to pull a reservation export. So from here, I can click on reservation. The select fields, these are columns that you're going to see on your export, and you can select whatever you want to view on that export. So maybe I want to see my reservation ID, I want to see my market ID, my source, my origin, I want to see the company name, arrival date and departure date. Let's say I want to take a look at my ADR, my first night price, my last night price, and could do, what else? We want to take a look here. I want to see who checked the guest in. I want to see who checked the guest out. And we could do confirmation number. So all these different options you can look at. So different things here. We can do the first name, last name, even pull up their contact information. This export will send out a CSV file, which you can open up in Excel. But I can put all their contact information here as well. Over here on to the right, you'll see it's showing the label. So that's what's actually going to show on the exports. To the right, you have filters. Now the filters are not going to save every time you add a filter. It's more meant for you to be able to select a filter when you run the exports. But for example, I want to add a filter here, and we have 3 options. Duration is your time, like how far back you want to go. If I want to look at last month's reservations, last 7 days, yesterday's, tomorrow's, today's. Most of it's all historical. I can do all reservations, our next 7-day reservations, are reservations for the next month as well. But let's say I want to take a look at the last month's reservations. I could add a second filter for range. Range is essentially a threshold. So I can say, based on my ADR, my first night price, my lead days, my number of nights, maybe I want to look at every reservation that had an ADR of either greater than, equal to, or less than, but I want to see everything greater than $150. And then I can add a third filter, which would be options. Options will give you a drop down here, and you can select certain options here. So for example, if I wanted to look at all the reservations for a specific market code, I can select market code and say, great, I want to look at my transient reservations. And then I can move on to the next area. Now I can set up this export to be emailed to me on a schedule, either daily, hourly, monthly, or weekly, or if I want to be able to run this on demand, I could just set this as a run once option. So if I do run once, and I can leave this area blank, next option I'm going to choose is how I want this report emailed. are sent to me. I'm going to do an email. And then over here in the very bottom left, you need to give it an export name. This is required. So I can give this past month reservations. And you can select your output on how you want this delivered. It could be an XML file, it could be a CSV file, or it could be a JSON. I'm going to go ahead and choose a CSV flat text file and then save the export. Now, once the export has been saved, I can go back to my exports, and here is that export I just created. And I could choose to run this whenever I want, and I could just say run now, and that will send me the export. Now you'll notice the filters don't save because you will need to select filters each time. So if there was something specific I want to see, other than just all the reservations, I would need to come here and then select my filter. So if I wanted to say, I want to look at options, and I just want to look at, my particular market code, and then I can select my market code for transient. And then I could run that now, and that filter will apply to that export I'm running at that time. All right, so this is a really great function. I encourage you to come in and take a look at it and try to play with it a little bit and see what you can come up with. It might be able to give you some data that you haven't been able to get in the past, but it's a great new feature that we've rolled out. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Erin, for some Q&A sessions if anybody has any questions out there.
Thank you, James, for that insightful presentation. Let me get back to my screen. All right, I would now like to turn over the floor to questions. Remember, you can submit questions through the question box in the middle of the control panel. We'll give everyone a few seconds to type in their questions. All right, so the first question, for custom exports, can you change the order of columns?
Absolutely, that's a great question. So if I go and take a look at the export here, I do see the labels in the columns here, but maybe I want the guest information to be first. I could easily just click and drag and move this all the way up to the top. That's a little cumbersome once it gets up here, but I could move it. Yeah. There we go. So I can move it all the way up to the top, and I can move the last name as well. So yeah, I have the ability to change the order of the columns to put it in the order I want.
Great. And there are no other questions right now. I'll give everyone a few more seconds. All right, since there are no more questions, I would like to take the floor to offer some final thoughts. All right, oops, actually, we just got one question. On custom reports, can we see the room move report?
Remove, let's see. I don't know if you'll be able to do room moves on exports. Let's see, reservation data. I know there was one that gives you a first night room number or something like that. Where did I see that at? First night price, last night price. Arrival room, there is a space for arrival room number and departure room number. So you could use those two options and then look for any variance in that export and be able to determine if there was a room move. Now, it's not going to tell you any information about like when the move happened or who did the room move, but you'll be able to identify reservations that had a room move because it's going to show you that arrival and departure room type and arrival room number and departure room number.
Great. All right, since there are no more questions, I'll just recap. So today we identified new updates to contracts, explored changes to group code requirements, identified the addition of arrival and departure time to the confirmation email, and discovered the addition of custom exports. With that, I'd like to conclude our presentation. Thank you for coming, and if you have any additional questions, feel free to email me at erin.fisher@shigigroup.com. And thanks again.
Thank you.